Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of The Midwest Artisan. I'm your host, Andy Hinkle.
And I'm your co-host, Dalton McCleary.
How you doing, Dalton?
Doing good. Yourself?
Good, man. Doing good.
Surviving?
Yeah, I've been through the ringer with Q serialization. You've paired with me a little bit on this, and so you kind of know some of the gist. Like, did you know this is a thing? So I'll set the scene.
Yes.
I've been investigating.
Give me the context.
Yeah, I've been investigating an issue with Q serialization. I have a job. It goes back and pulls a nightly report. So it goes back to the previous day, pulls the report, stores it, etc. So I have it in the console of the scheduler. I do like schedule, : job, and then the job class and put it daily, right? So I want this to run every day, pull yesterday's report, save it, do the whole thing. So in my job class, I have a constructor. So it's like public function construct. This is in actually job function class. Then inside public function construct, inside the parameters, like open construct inside the parentheses, I have public ? Carbon, like illuminate support carbon, like so to set it as null. So either a carbon object or null. Variable date equals null. And I apologize, just talking code on an audio podcast, rather, isn't it? But just imagine you have a constructor. Inside your constructor, you have public carbon variable date equals null. Date or carbon has a question mark in front of it, just saying it can be null or a carbon object. So we put tests behind this. So like one of the tests even is like if it's null, to ensure that the date is getting set to yesterday. So when you do pass null, it will inside the constructor do something like this date. If the date is set, use that. If it's not set, go today sub day. So that way it's getting yesterday's report, not today's report. So what I was finding is that it would create a new carbon instance of today, no matter what. Like if it's null, unless you pass a carbon object to it, but if it's null, it will automatically just create a carbon instance, even though you deliberately set it as null, which is so strange. And the reason that we have a variable like of null instead of just setting it properly is that we have in other places where you can go like and fulfill like dates in the past. So you can do like date ranges in the past, and it just kind of loops through start date and end date, creates a carbon object for each individual date into this job. You can pass it the date, etc. But in this case, I'm like, hey, if I don't pass it anything, if it's just null, give it yesterday. And so that way it's clear. Separations of concerns are good. However, so when you schedule it in your console, this is where it just gets really tricky. So date, when you do date, it's a new carbon instance of today, not yesterday. So it's so strange. I have never run into this. And so the biggest frustration is if I fire this job manually, like through the driver of like sync or like a non-console thing, like a non-schedule, works fine. Like you get today's sub day, like you get yesterday. But so did a lot of digging. It's like something in the job serialization process. So like when the schedule is running or setting up, it's something like the deconstruction of the serialization or something where it takes that null and creates just a new carbon object of today. It's so weird. So I moved it to the handle method. Like inside the handle method, it can do. But that's so weird too, because inside the handle method, like it's so hard to handle because it's always a carbon object, even if you deliberately set it as null. It's the strangest thing. So yeah, I put it in the handle method, and what I did inside the handle method, I use a method inside there to just, hey, call this up and return the right carbon instance. Just very strange and kind of a quirk in like the Q serialization. That little long-winded there. Have you? I mean, we kind of during halfway through this is like I need to pair with somebody because I'm going to lose my mind. So I talked to you about it, and you're like, you had a lot of great like debugging things to just say like, hey. Because we figured out we couldn't replicate it at all locally. We tried.
Yeah.
And so at one point we thought it was a vapor issue. And then once I figured it out, I tried it over in Forge, and it's an issue. Like, it happens over there too. And then I was able to finally replicate it locally by just running the whole like schedule, on your like schedule command on your CLI. Finally got it to replicate locally. Oh yeah, it's just weird that like. So TLDR and all of that, a little long-winded. If you have a new job class and you have a construct in there, if it's like you put public carbon date equals null, it will set the carbon. It'll create a new carbon object, which I'm curious if it does that for users and models and all of that. I think that's kind of like how that works, the serialization. But I don't know. Have you seen this? Have you seen anything like this?
No, yeah. And I was gonna pull my hair out when we were pair programming on it, because I couldn't figure it out either. I was like, oh, it's probably just something really dumb, something easy. Oh no, it's actually quite hard. Oh no, this is actually really, really hard. Why is it doing this? And we tested all kinds of thought. We like, I think at the end of that call, we were like, it's probably just a Vapor thing, the way that Vapor has, the queue set on a different version of the application and sort of that. But I mean, how much did you test on it? Because I was going to ask you if you tested it on Forge, because the last that we talked about it, that was what I knew. I didn't know if you'd fixed it yet. I was going to ask if it worked on Forge. I was going to ask if it worked with date time instead of carbon as well. I wonder if it's just like a carbon thing, or if it's an actual date time issue, because it's definitely something with that type hint is like, oh, you can't have a null version of this specific type, like a carbon. It just doesn't happen. So yeah, that's super, super odd and super very specific. I mean, I guess not specific enough, because I've put jobs that have dates as their constructors. I've put classes that have dates as their constructors. And it seems so odd to me that it would always default to today. Yeah. So I'm curious on how you did fix it, because if it does default to today, how do you know that it was past null in order to figure out that it was yesterday? You know what I mean? Like how did you actually fix it? You said you put it in the handle method, and you have some other stuff. I want to dive just one level deeper.
Sure. Yeah. So you brought up Vapor, and because we've been bit by Vapor before, without going to a side tangent. But like, for example, you can't set jobs past like a retry after 15 minutes. So if you have a flaky API, you have to set it to retry within those 15 minutes. Like, you can't try 3 hours later. You just have to continuously retry, which is annoying. But just AWS, it's not a Vapor thing directly. It's AWS, it's upstream. But yeah, so we thought, we kind of like, we're starting to wonder, because if we've dealt with queue issues in the past in Vapor, maybe it's some like interesting AWS Vapor thing. But yeah, I ended up, it's really hacky and I don't like it. I'm probably going to go figure out how to refactor it. But what it is I check if the time is midnight on the date requirement. And if it is, I do today, if it's not midnight, I do today sub day, like basically, because I know at that point it's giving a new carbon object. But it's kind of like, I hate this logic, because I have to know as a developer, anytime I pass to it, I have to make sure it's midnight. So I wrote a stupid comment in there, but I'm going to refactor it because I don't like it. It obviously smells funny. So because anywhere else you're passing the dates into there, it's always going to be midnight. And since it's going to create a new carbon object, it will very likely not be midnight to the millisecond. And so because of that, I know that it's doing some weird stuff in the constructor. It's setting that carbon object for some weird reason. And I just have to reset that and just do today sub day. So that's kind of my current implementation. I hate it. It smells because you have to know, like, if you pass the random today carbon object sub day, it's not going to work. It's going to take that and change it. So, but yeah, it smells terrible, but it works for now. I was able to deploy on a Friday with that change. Hated it. But,
oh no.
Yeah.
Friday scares me. Also, it's just, while you were talking, I had the weird thought of, if someone who's not a developer or good with Laravel, if you've made it this far in this podcast and you're like, wow, why are they talking that their code smells? just know that just means hacky, right? It smells funky. But it's very clever. That's very clever that you basically trying to see if it's a system generated date versus like if you're passing it a date. It's very clever.
So doing now, yeah, because if you just do new carbon, if you just like write date equals new carbon, it's going to give you now, and so I just work around it. I hate it, but I'll figure it out. But
it's clever.
It's super weird. Like so the problem is we can't test it. You can't test the functionality with it because you'd be testing Laravel code at that point. You have to test the scheduler, ensure that the scheduler serialization works, which is just weird with Laravel. And you don't want to get that far when you're actually testing the framework to ensure the framework is doing what it should be doing. Just no. So it's something with the serialization. I didn't see it in the documentation anywhere. Like I tried, there's some mentions of serialization, but so what I'm to a point now is I'm trying to figure out how it happened or like why that's occurring, and then maybe even make a note of it in the docs if it's like this is really a thing, or if I'm dumb and I just don't know. I've always known for many years past, like you don't want to mess with the constructor too much in jobs and in the scheduler. Like if you put in the scheduler, for example, I could have done something like schedule : job and then pass it the class and then comma, then gave it like now sub day or today sub day in the actual console scheduler. But when if that is cached, or if that goes through there where it takes a snapshot of your schedule, it's going to be that current deployment time. It's not gonna, so that date's gonna be frozen. It's not gonna be the actual sub day, if that makes sense. So I know that's been an issue, like just to be careful on your parameters and stuff. So yeah, it's kind of wild.
What a nightmare! Like I think we were even talking about this. Was it like 3 days ago? So this has been like a 3-day bug. And I don't want to say anything, but I don't know if I see any gray hairs. But if that was me, there would be a lot of gray hairs after figuring all that out.
It's frustrating because it's one of those things that at the time it could only get it to happen in production. Then you have to do the stupid thing like testing this on all your staging environments just to see if you can actually get it to finally replicate. And finally we got there, but it just, anytime you have to ship debug statements into production, like log : debug, it's just like, come on, man. and then it's like you're trying to not make a release because we have staging then production. Trying to not make a release for such a dumb thing. Luckily, we're able to replicate it on the staging environment before the production, so we don't have to make a release. But yeah, man, it's been a headache just trying to figure out the serialization. You know how many times I looked at the constructor? I went letter for letter, looking at if I'm missing anything here, and just pulled everything out. And then I finally, when I just started minimizing the whole thing, it finally triggered of oh, okay, it's a serialization that's an issue. So
just such an odd thing, man.
Ask Claude, ask Chat GPT, nothing. Got terrible results. It was telling me maybe your app time zone is all wrong. I'm like, nope, it's UTC. Maybe try to force the time zone. Okay, I don't know why it would want to be any different, but try that. Nope. So do a carbon arrow or date arrow, right? Use time zone. Yeah. It was a whirlwind, but finally got there.
What chaos, man! And it's probably just because of the PHP type hinting, right? That's probably what just jacked you up.
Yeah, I wonder. Because we talked about. Well, now that you mentioned it, we talked on the show. It may have been last episode or one before. We talked about how you can create a new carbon object from the constructor.
Yes.
So, which is nice, but now we're finding the evil side of that. Is this what it's doing? So
the dichotomy.
Yeah.
Hey,
it's coming full circle.
That's a good callback.
Yeah.
I didn't think about that.
Yeah.
Well, now you know the cons. The cons is a 3-day headache. The pros is it looks really nice.
Yeah. 3 days and 2 walks. 2 walks of maybe I can move it outside the constructor. Would that be the problem? Nope. Tried that. Moving outside the parentheses of the constructor, the public promotion, moving out of the public promotion. Nope. Not a thing. So yeah.
Wow. What a crazy week you've had.
It's been good. Yeah. It's been fun though. It's stuff like that will keep you up at night, but it's always fun once you find a solution. And thank goodness I found it before the end of the day of being Friday. So it's good.
That's true. Yeah, it's like beating a Dark Souls boss. Have you ever beat Dark Souls? A Dark Souls
I've
boss,
not
like
played.
the wave of relief when you finally like figure something out, like you can just breathe.
I've heard that game is really good because it like the first when you start out, it'll like that you'll find a boss but you can't defeat it. But it's kind of like it sets the tone for the game. Like you need to like usually games kind of level up and then you might get to a boss, but it's like level 1. Oh, here's the boss, or you might have to come back and get this guy later. It kind of sets the tone of like you have to get better then come back to it. I kind of like that. I've never played it, but
you should.
My brother tells me all about it.
You should get Elden Ring. Yeah. Elden Ring's good. Yeah. Anyway,
I'm too nerdy for video games. I need to go level deeper and do programming.
You program your own video game. And that's a great like problem. Like I used to do that in college. We were actually building a video game as a final project, and the video game was to teach you how to program the video game that you're playing. And so that's actually a great like final boss. The specific bug that you just had would be the perfect final boss for that video like programming video game.
Yeah. Yeah, that'd be a good one.
So yeah, like PHP. I think PHP screwed you on that, but there are some nice things about PHP. I don't know if you saw. Well, I know you saw. You've seen PHP 8.4, right? Came out. Mm-hmm. Have you upgraded yet? Anything that you like about it?
Yeah, I haven't upgraded yet. I usually wait a little bit, usually about a month or so, just to kind of work out the. I know it has like a beta, but I feel like it really gets solidified after good month or two of rollout. But I've been kind of watching just been curious of what's different on it. And I know they have like the property hooks, I think it is, right? And there's some other things that I haven't seen any benchmarks. And years before, I'd be like, hey guys, we have JIT now. Take a look at the difference. And it's like, wow, this is pretty incredible. And so, because I brought up this in our developer meeting here at an agency we both work at, and there was like, they're like, what's changed? And I'm like, well, not a lot. We got, some array helpers. We got property hooks. We got like versus the getters and setters. So, but I haven't seen any actual, like usually before it's like, hey, we got JIT. Look at the performance increase. And usually that's kind of been our selling point for clients too. It's like, hey, client, like we're going to upgrade your PHP. We're going to see some performance increases. Now it's just more like, hey, this is just to stay up with compliance and we're staying with end of life, stuff, etc. So, but yeah, I'm curious if we can get rid of our getters and setters now. Like we don't have too many of those with Laravel, but like with property hooks, because for a while now in PHP, like setting a public property is faster than going through a getter and setter to access like a private property. So like I think there was something like if you set a public property instead of going through a getter setter, it's like 60% slower or something like that. But now they have these new property hooks, and I saw something like it brings that number up to only a 9% decrease. And so now it's like it doesn't really matter if you use a property hook versus getter setter. It's all just, I guess, just preference. What you would prefer. Yeah. So it kind of lines up with that, which I just wish there was. I know I like the flexibility, but I just wish there was just like, hey everyone, this is the way. In Laravel, there's a lot of that, like especially with
very opinionated.
Yeah, there there's linters and stuff like that, or a PHP stand that will like flag it, but yeah, I just wish there was more like, hey everybody, this is what we recommend. But it's kind of cool that you can come choose either or, and they're kind of bringing that 60% slower up to only 9%. But yeah, there's just not. I think in every PHP, every PHP release in recent years, been like, ooh, that's gonna be really nice. But this one, I'm like, okay, so.
Yeah, there's probably like two things in it totally that are like that I thought was like, oh, that's really nice, and it's that one where you don't have to wrap your class in parentheses to call a method anymore. If you just want to do that, that's fine. Love that. That's great. A lot of those like array, there's like an array find or something with a key where you can find a key in an array really quick with a callback. Like that's great. I love those two things. Otherwise, I haven't looked at anything else to upgrade since. But just those two things, I'm like, all right, that's nice. but nothing's blowing my socks off, and it's
Yeah.
quite hard to do that. And I've already had my socks blown off like 4 times this year with the Laravel announcements and cloud and Nightwatch and all that other stuff. So this is probably really impressive to like your average PHP developer, but to us, after all these things, this is all right. This is nice. It's not crazy.
Yeah.
It's not bad. It's not. It's nice.
Yeah. Yeah. With I'm kind of curious with PHP and JIT. Yeah, I'm kind of curious like if they're going to continue with that. I didn't really see much updates. They did something with OP cache, like you could set some memory limit thing or something where it's a bit faster with OP cache, but maybe it's just becoming more mature now. But just in recent releases, there hasn't been any, like with this PHP A4, there hasn't been anything game changing or like granular changing with the JIT compiler. So I'm wondering if they're starting to see the limitations there and maybe have to pivot or something. But yeah, I'm kind of curious where they'll take it with future PHP versions.
Yeah, let's see. They only got to 7.4 last time, so does that mean 8.4 is the last one? We're going to go to 9, or are we going to do the Apple thing?
I don't know.
Go to 10 and just
forget
that
the
9
Laravel
exists.
thing.
Yeah,
do the Laravel thing.
just
5.4, 5.5, 6. Well, I think we had a 5.6. Yeah, and then 6.0.
6, 7,
7,
8. Yeah.
8. Yeah.
All right, checkmate PHP maintainers. Let's
Gosh,
see if we get an 8.5.
The versioning on Laravel, like I got it from like Laravel maintainability standpoint, but there are so many people like, oh my gosh, Laravel is just updating so much, I can't keep up. Like when it went from 6 to 7 to 8, and it was just so annoying. Yeah.
Guys, relax.
Yeah,
think of
it's normal.
It's not a crazy like 5.3 or 5.4. Like that was crazy, right? And that was a quote unquote minor update. I remember that. And I was like, Jesus, most of my stuff is broken in 5.4 of Laravel.
Yeah. Yeah. My one of the sites that I change code on once a year, I did Laravel 10 to 11, and I think I just had to change env variables, like when they changed the cache driver to cache store or whatever. Yeah. That was it, and it worked. Like I didn't have to practically do anything. So yeah.
You didn't delete all your config files? That's what I did when I was upgraded to 11. I just got rid of them.
On all of them, just about all my other apps, yep, I did that. I went through what's it called, Laravel Shift, because it just does all of that. But yeah, other than that, that was the only app I didn't do it on, just because it's like I changed like a date on the website when it's like a local basketball tournament that I help with. I don't make anything. I just participate, and just a fun little thing I do. And I just changed some of the context, some of the rules, and like the registration link to sign up, and that's it. It's a little like landing page, but that's it. And I just went straight 10 to 11. Like I could probably put it like on a Next.js app, but it's just like simple. I just love Blade too much, so it was easy
Blade
to strike up. Tailwind. It's very simple. So
nice.
Cool. So we've been having some downtime. Christmas holidays, it gets a little bit slower, and I've been thinking about. I have like a journal, not really a journal. It sounds very like sophisticated, but I have like a little notebook that any paper cut I run into with Laravel, I just jot it down. And some of it's funny. Some of it I look at it and I'm like, what the heck was I even talking about? It just like I'll write like a bullet point. And so I went back through the journal and started looking through some things, and one thing I mentioned was publishing stubs. Like when you do PHP Artisan stub publish, it gives you everything. I think it's like 50 stubs.
That's a lot.
So it's like, because they added a lot more, because you can do Artisan, make enum now, make cast, etc. And you have to have a stub for each one of those. And so they've added several new ones, probably I want to say around 30, maybe less, probably around 20 to be realistic. But new stubs. But I found it overwhelming, especially like if I need a stub for like migrations, for example. I don't like to do a DAO method, which I'd like to talk about that on the show. I don't like to do like DAO methods, so I don't have to remove it every time, put it in a stub, remove it, and then if I need it, you can add in later, etc. But the stubs are really nice. It keeps you focused what you need to do. But if I do that, like every single stub is published. And then if Laravel goes in, adds something new or changes something, I've run into this where I'll upgrade an app and then I'll have stubs back on from like Laravel 6. And so I have to go figure out and like, okay, I need to force these stub changes, and you just have to remember to do that. And I was like, I'd rather just rely on Laravel's defaults, and if it changes, whatever, So anyway, yeah. So one thing I wrote down, like stub publish, like why is that so frustrating? Like it just gives you everything. It should give you something, maybe like a flag of like -- only, like stub publish -- only, and you just tell it what you want. And so I started looking at doing stub publish -- only, and I got thinking about it. And we have, like, when you do PHPRs to make controller, if you don't pass it anything, it gives you like this really nice interface of like, hey, what do you want to name this? What kind of options do you want to have? Especially when you're setting up a new Laravel app, it's really interactive that way. And so that's using Laravel prompts. And I was thinking, like, what would it be like if I just did a select in there? You can select which one you want. And that just expanded into, okay, well, what if I do a multi-select? Okay, so I made it to where you could do a multi-select when you do stub publish. And then I went one further. I'm like, what if you could type something in there, like migrations, and it just filtered, or type in controllers and it just showed you everything. And you could just select which ones you want on your keyboard, hit enter, and it just publishes those stubs. So made a PR. And so what that will do is you can tell it which stubs you want to publish directly from that selection menu I was explaining. So it's easier to target exactly the stub that you need. Uses Laravel prompts. It has that fuzzy search like I was talking about. And it has an all option. So if you want to go back to the way it was before, if you do stub publish, which you're an animal if you want to do this, like I just want everything. But you can just do stub publish -- all. So I felt really good about it. I sent the PR in. Then I started looking at I'm totally blanked, because usually when I think of this stuff, I kind of see if somebody else has done this in the past. Because I've run into other things of like, ooh, this would be nice. And then I go look up in PRs and somebody else has done it. And then Taylor just didn't like it. Maybe even the implementation, or if it's just something about it, maybe it just wasn't the right time, etc. And so I totally forgot to do that. And I went back, and it was submitted by other people a couple other times. One was by Luke Downing, which is Laracast instructor, really cool dude, really nice guy. Met him at Laracon this past year. So he submitted the only option, like stub publish -- only, and then Taylor came back and said, hey, what about if we did like Laravel prompts or something? And that's why he closed it. And I was like, well, hey, I just didn't realize that. So I put a comment. I was like, hey guys, like, yeah, I didn't realize that that's the direction they're looking to go anyway. I just happened to stumble upon it, just trying to, like, what if we could just do more out of this? And ended up coming into that. And there was a couple other PRs where people were kind of doing something similar, just trying to do a match. But anyway, submitted in. Taylor came back, and he wanted the names to sound a bit more like human readable. And so after reviewing them, I realized like the names, they didn't really sound natural anyway. It'd be like migration.create.stub would be like one of the options you'd have to select through. It wasn't really friendly. And so I totally got that angle. So and I also found out, like, when I used like the string helper, like migration create, it would just be .stub. It would just be migration create. I'm like, well, that doesn't really make sense. So I'd do something like I'd use a secondary descriptor. So instead of controller invocable, it would be invocable controller. Same thing, like create migration, through that list. So I did that, brought lowercase API to all uppercase API, just all just little things in there. Handling strings, just like you would expect doing that. Mm-hmm. But then what caught me by surprise is Taylor also said, he's like, I only want let's trim down the section to only include the most commonly used stubs, published stubs. I'm like, what are the most common ones? Well, I was like, well... So I went through all of our apps at our agency, just kind of like jotting down which ones are used. And I just kind of thought of, like, as a community, like which ones, and I just like couldn't come up with a great answer. So I just like, what are just kind of the most commonly ones, and it ended up still being quite the list. So but I reviewed all of them and just kind of focus on the essentials, but there's just so many, because you never know with your type of application. I feel like not having it there is kind of critical. But I went through, and it was, I got my list here: models, controllers, migrations, seeders, factories, tests, resources, notifications, mailables, and jobs. No, that's a lot. But
That is still
I feel
kind of
like
a lot.
at least in our agency, I've been in every, like all the stubs in those situations I've interacted. Like queues, for example. I hate that I know Pint could fix this, but I hate how like the traits are all on one. Like use this, use that, use this. Like on when you create a job. So like we have a stub just to make it like just one use and it's comma separated. So yeah. Anyway, yeah. So. I went through, just try to find, and it brought the list, the stuff like the ones you can produce from 52, I think it was, to around 30. So then I was like, I just told Taylor, like, this is my best opinion. I don't know, but just some thoughts there. And there were some things in like enum stubs and like those probably aren't going to be used, So yeah, but those are, brought the list down. And I also was asking, like, maybe you should create, like, we should add like a list all flag, like you can do stub publish list all and it gives you those enums. But it's just kind of weird as a developer. Like you got to know that why isn't enum stub in here? Why is it not in here if you go publish stub and it's not there? So I'm kind of, I don't know, I can see Taylor kind of probably going back and forth on it because usually he's very prompt on his PR. So like let you know. And it's been like a week. I haven't heard anything. So
I was going to ask about the follow-up.
It's been open. Yeah, I've got a few, like, I asked some feedback on Twitter, and Blue Sky, and people seem to really like it, at least because it's not groundbreaking or anything, but it is a nicety. It's just something that's always kind of bugged me. Yeah. Yeah. And so I got some good feedback. I hope maybe it might be accepted or I can continue just kind of poking at it, but yeah, we'll see. But it is kind of nice to, when you do your stub publishing it, you can choose which ones you want. You shouldn't get the whole kitchen sink, So.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, because
I
don't
want to
think
Is that
delete a bunch of stuff.
Are you a stub guy? You're a stub guy. That sounds so weird. You a stub guy?
Well, Andy, let me tell you. No, not. I think I told you. I think the only like stub that I routinely want to update is the migrations. Mm-hmm. And that's usually my only use case for it because. This is weird, and it's totally my preference. Is I hate the comments in the migration, so I'll always remove the comments from the up and the down method. Most times I'll remove the down method too. So it's literally just an up. It's the leanest file that I can possibly get it to be, because I want it to be so simple. So that's usually my only use case that I'll do it. I'll always keep the fact or I'll always keep the default factories, models, controllers, whatever Laravel thinks is great. I'll use that. I'm not much for the customization part.
Yeah, and to your point, I know when we work on projects together, in a model, for example, like if you have the public function cast or public property cast, and up at the top there's a comment, the attributes that should be cast. Like
get those out of there.
Yes, yeah, and so we set a stub to remove those. You could probably do something through Pint or something, but then I found out it's not really reliable through the PHP CS fixer of like, I don't want this particular one, but there's some other times I do want to comment, so you can't do the either or. So we just strip it in stubs and it works really nice. Yeah, so people are going to know. People are going to know that's the cast.
Yeah. I mean, it's cast. It's public. Yeah. Or I guess it's protected, right? Protected cast, or you use the public function.
If you use
cast.
public, be
you know what it is. Oh, yeah. You know what it is, right? Like I don't need a 7-line comment of like, this is where you're going to cast things into different classes and et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, those are my only use cases. So I guess models and migrations are my big issues. I'm curious though, if you said you posted it on Twitter and Blue Sky, how did you ask people like what their most common stubs that they use? Like is that what you use to determine sort of quote unquote popular ones? Like, hey, of these 52 classes, how many do you guys normally publish? Did you ask stuff like that?
Yeah, I did, and I got some weird responses like, why are you asking? Like, that's such a weird thing. Like, why? What does it matter? And I was like, yeah, I had to kind of explain. But I did ask. It was on Discord. I asked a few, just like Laravel community members, like, when you guys do a stub publish, like, what do you do? And most of them just say they just publish everything. They just don't. I guess they just never really questioned it. They just like, well, if I just publish it, but if I ever need to like change it, I just go change it, because it's already published. It doesn't really matter. But my side of like, after upgrading Laravel apps over the years, I just found that those stubs get left behind, and I don't know if Laravel Shift fixes that. I think it was a good suggestion for Jason if if it doesn't, but I think it does. I don't know. But some of the apps that we've upgraded, we can like, oh man, this is using the old factory stub, stuff like that. And we just have to just ensure that it's updated, and we get confused of why we do a create factory and it's using the old stub, or something, or one from the 5 or 6 days.
Yeah, and oof, those factory classes back in the day, oof.
Yeah.
They're so much better now, but they were pretty rough back in the day. Yeah, because I mean, the last thing you're going to do when you're upgrading from like 10 to 11 or using Shift is, I need to republish all my stubs.
Who thinks
and at that
of
point,
that? Nobody.
You have to republish them all, right? Because now if you make changes to the migration thing, you basically override it, and you have to go back and sort of undo the republish.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a bad paper cut.
Yeah, maybe I'm just weird, and I really like just to the small things of like, I want my application to match like the Laravel/Laravel repo, like the skeleton repo. Like even the code comments to the slightest things and Laravel Shift does an amazing job at that. And otherwise you have to manually do it and stuff. But even like for stubs or for anything, I want it to be like, I don't have to worry about like something weird. Like when I'm focused on a feature, when I'm focused on like writing code, I don't want this like, oh, what's going on here? This is from Laravel 5 or Laravel 6, and I have to figure out how to baby it along, going forward. It's always nice just to when you do have, everything's up to date, everything's fresh. It doesn't have to be on the latest version. I don't have to be on PHP 8.4 today, but I'm just saying when I do finally make that upgrade, I really expect, my code to kind of reflect that, and I don't have all this legacy code hanging around.
Yeah. The less that we have to maintain, the better, because it just gets insane. I mean, I think last I looked, I think I had like 22 Laravel sites that I manage now. So I mean, everything that we have to change, times it by 22 on a given day. I don't want to have to republish and edit 22 different sites worth of stub files. Whatever 22 times 52 is, that's a lot of files. I don't want to have to do that.
Right. Or if we're handing off the Laravel app to somebody else, or, I'm having somebody else work on a feature, I don't want them have to like realize, oh, this is a weird thing from Laravel 6 or Laravel 7 and old component pattern. Don't worry about it. It just doesn't make sense for sure.
Yeah. Well, I should put one of those old factory classes from 5.4 in just one random Laravel site just to see what happens.
Just confuse people.
And then I'm going to go on PTO and I'm just going to see if somebody loses their mind. Like, what in the hell is this?
Oh, sorry, I don't even remember what that looks like.
Oh, it's bad. I remember. It was like...
I'm trying to picture that.
It wasn't even like a class, right? It was just like a PHP file, and I think you gave it a model class, and it was just like an array of just garbage, right? It was
Wasn't
just
like a user factory : then you have to do it?
Yeah, it was basically like a config file, if I remember right. It was just like it returned an array almost, and it wasn't like an actual class that you could define methods and stuff in. If I
Interesting.
Remember right.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember that too. It's crazy. It wasn't that long ago, but now I'm like, how could we ever done anything any differently? Same thing for Laravel components. I mean, how did we do it without this back in just the MVC days? Like everything's a model view controller. But
a lot of includes in those blade files.
Yeah. Man, I can't remember the last time I wrote an include.
Extend. I haven't used extend in
yeah,
forever.
Oh man,
right?
I know.
Extend in sections. I remember all that stuff. Woo.
So another one
right there.
Yeah. Another one I went upon is like, I was doing a lot of modular stuff, like modular development. So I forget who that package is by. He's a community member. It's Chris, call him Boss Chris, but I can't remember. Is it
Boss
Chris Morale? Boss Chris. Yeah, it's his Laravel community member name. Daniel Coburn calls him Boss Chris because he used to work for him. So. Really smart guy. Met him at LaraCon this year, and he has a podcast. But he has this package out there. It allows you to develop Laravel apps in a modular way. And you've helped me on a few of these, and you've kind of questioned it. And like I've tried to get you to bite in on a few of it, but without getting into the whole modular debate, there's another area where I'm looking to help for this too, and that's also package development. But so one thing I would like talking about stubs and just file generation in general. One thing I've been looking at to PRing into Laravel is this idea of in your app service provider having like an enforce file map. So hear me out. You do like a make PHP Artisan make model. And maybe you don't want it to be in your app models folder. Maybe you're Taylor Otwell and you just like it in your app folder. He was like, he didn't change that for a long time.
It was a long time.
Yeah, I feel like he heard enough from the community and like, yeah, we need an app models folder. But if you prefer that way, right? You can do like, so just, I feel like I've talked a lot about like, code what it looks like on an audio podcast, which is not helpful. But just pretend you're in your app service provider. You type in generator command : and then you have enforce file map in open parentheses. So this is very similar to the Eloquent enforce morph map, if you're familiar with that. Yep. Mm-hmm. So inside there you can open, so you have enforce file map, open parentheses. Then you have an array for this array iteration. Mm-hmm. Inside the array, the key of the array is the stub name. So it would be like command.stub or model.stub.
Okay.
Function. So like it just like where you want it to go. So basically you're making a callback of where you want the file to go. So it'd be like the key would be command.stub, arrow function name is like the original name. Like this is where the name of the file is going to be, like inside the function. So then you can give it a return path of a string. So you can do like app path / custom / blank or name.php. So you can move when you do PHP Artisan make model, it's going to put it in the custom folder, like the literally the name folder called custom. Or you can just do app path and just not give it anything. And then it will deliberately drop it in your app path, like Taylor likes to have his models back in the day. This is really helpful for modular development and also like package development. Like there's been a few times where you can't test something that's package related in Laravel. So what you do is you make like a folder in your directory and just basically copy your package out of there. And just work from an actual like Laravel application sitting on top. Does that make sense? Yeah.
That's me.
Yeah, I think everyone's been there. Yeah, everyone's been there. Because there's been sometimes you just can't do it. Like you might have to see a web page or something, or wherever the case is. You have to you need to actually physically see it. So what you do is you drop your package in maybe your app directory and just reference it in your Composer file or something. Mm-hmm. But anyway, Composer, if you have like a Laravel app set up just for that, you can do like in your app service provider, generator command : enforce file map, open that up, and then you can do model.stub. And then so when you create a model, you can put it inside that package. And so when you do like make model, it's like a CLI basically for your package development. Makes it so much easier, but helps with like domain driven development. You can it's a function, so you can do whatever you want in there. So if you do like function name, you can just do like a match statement based on the name. So there's two parameters I put in there. I was thinking about is like when you do function name, so that's the name of the file that's coming in, and then comma is the default file space. So if you want to do like a string helper to kind of tweak that or whatever, or if you want to just slightly add one more directory on top of that, or just change it, whatever. In my case, like for my tests, for example, like one of my big use cases for this, my tests, I like to reflect it to be exactly like the application folder. So instead of it in like feature HTTP controllers, I want it to be like feature app HTTP controllers, et cetera, et cetera. Mm-hmm. So that way it reflects exactly verbatim. That way I know exactly like the file that's testing. So getting a little long-winded here, but that's kind of, I've cut up a proof of concept. I haven't submitted a pull request yet. But one thing I ran into, I'll stop there. I'm just kind of curious for your thoughts.
Yeah, the thing that I would use it the most for is package development. But I'm curious on when you were talking about modular, like if I want to make a model for a specific feature and it has a specific folder, how can I like dynamically tell it where to go? Like I want to make a model, so I do PHP Artisan make model, and I've got this enforce thing in my service provider, and I want models, model create stub to go to the app models directory? How can I tell that to go to, oh, I want it to go into, this feature A, and then now the next time I do that, I want it to go into feature B.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like I want to make a model for this feature. Now, a week later, I'm going to make another model for a different feature. How do I change the directories on the fly without like altering the actual make command to have an extra argument? Does that make sense?
Yep, it does. And that's actually what the modular package does, is it overrides. It basically extends that class, and then it hooks into your app service provider and then just changes how it works. So basically when you do make model, there's a flag in there called module. So you can do like module administration. And then it will go in your modular, and it knows this is going to be in the administration area. And so that's how that package works is it just extends that class, and it works fine today. This wouldn't be able to fix that per se, but it would allow them to kind of lean on Laravel a bit more to kind of construct that of how it should be placed instead of having to extend it and then override it. And then same thing for package developers. It can be helpful. And then if you have any business rules, business logic, or just something like really specific that you want to do make controller, but you want the controller to be in somewhere very specific, it gets that point. One thing I'm glad you brought that up, because one thing I've been thinking about is like something like that. You want to do, maybe you want to pass a modular flag or just any type of flag that you want. Maybe inside the method we can, like I told you, we gave it the callback on it. Mm-hmm. We give them the name of the file and the default namespace. Maybe the third thing is just like the options that was provided. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Like, so that way they at least have context. They can do like a match or like a return based on like the options that were given. So that way they at least know. Yeah. It gets really kind of complicated, but complicated in scope. And so I'm trying to figure out like the best way to kind of set this up. I was going to mention one of the things I ran into was namespaces. So Laravel kind of guesses that the namespace based at like what's provided in the context. So if you do like make controller /administration /user admin controller, it's going to like ensure that the file space is correct, that it's including administration in your namespace and stuff like that. And it's going to put that new folder in there called administration. So it works really well with that. With my change, it has a thing in there in the code, is if it knows your callback. So you can either do a return of a string, and it just knows like this is the direct path of where the file needs to go. If you return an array, there's another method. If you return an array, you can give inside the array, you can give a path in a namespace. So you can give it the path of where you want it to go, and then the next key is the namespace. So if you want to have this really bizarre custom namespace, all good. So that's one, like, it's really useful for packages, really, is what that kind of got me thinking there. So to enforce file generation assignments would be kind of a neat thing to have. I don't know. It might be in scope and possible issues. It may arise from it. Like if I know Laravel looks for controllers and stuff they know in the app directory. And so if you put something weird and you put it in your public domain, or, just something that a junior might, run into if you're not really careful. But then again, you could really screw yourself up with morph map if you don't know what you're doing there. So I don't know.
Oh yeah. No, that's interesting. That gets my wheels turning on what I would use it for, specifically for package development. That would be nice. Modular development would be cool. I mean, they've got a package. Yeah, they kind of solved that already. Right. So you would just sort of like another version of that within Laravel that you can do without including that package. Yeah, there's a lot of weird things that you could. I mean, it's dynamic enough to where I could probably give it a callback and say, hey, based on an argument 1, I want it to put into this directory and I want it to follow this namespace. I don't want it to be app, admin, whatever. I want it to be admin something HTTP controllers. Or if it's not admin and it's user, I do want it in the app directory and I want it in app models namespace. So it opens me up for more dynamic stuff for complex Laravel applications. I feel like normal Laravel applications probably a bit overkill. So I'm curious on how many big applications would would use something like that instead of a modular approach, or just doing it all by hand, where they just do, hey, make model, and then I'll just manually move it into this directory and change the namespace myself. Right. So
yeah, domain-driven development. Yeah,
it's a very specific paper cut that I think it has use cases in complex Laravel applications.
Yeah.
I don't know how the hell you would test all of those scenarios. You know what I mean?
Yeah. That's
a lot.
Yeah. I've run into some problems with Laravel like itself, because they have the generator command, which is like what just about most commands like they use for generating things. Sometimes they overwrite that. Like if you do make control, or if you make model -m -f, it's going to make you a model migration a factory.
Yeah.
But it's actually, that command is the make model command explicitly is like, it's listening for those -m -f, and it's overriding those methods that hook into this generator command, if that makes sense. So basically I have to rework it into a trait and just call it on several different commands in the Laravel framework to make this even work properly. And then that's even when it's possibly even close to being considerable for a PR. But I've been really curious, like just from other people's opinions, mostly with big Laravel apps, like, you know, do you run into this like when you want your file generated? Because most of the time it's probably just like stubs. Like when I ask people's opinion there, they're just like, I just publish it, I don't care, it's there. But I bet you would, when you do make model or make controller, if it's not in the right place, so I'm just going to click and drag the file over and call it a day. Like say, you know, takes you 2 extra seconds. But I guess for just for compliance and for things you don't really have to think about it, when things just work, you know, and based on your business requirements, it's just something you set up in your app service provider. It makes things really handy.
Yeah. Onboarding, if you're working with multiple developers on a team, right? Like everybody's making models here and there. It's just going to throw it here. Mike forgot to move his model to this directory because he just forgot.
Yeah. Well, another one, I don't know if this would work for Livewire, but for this example. I don't know if they fixed it, but when you were in modular and you were working with Livewire, if you did like make Livewire and you gave it modular flag, it just didn't work. Like make like a Livewire component -- modular, it didn't work because it was like it was something in the the Livewire generation is its own separate thing. So I don't know if it would work for that. So just something, I just want it to be kind of fluent across the board and kind of help that. I don't know if that's still a thing now in the modular package. I don't know if you can, when you do make Livewire, like if it's still like -- modular, does that work now? But I'm curious. But anyway, at least when I was working on it, it did not, but that was about a year ago.
There's some stuff to chew on there, and I think it almost makes me think that I would like some sort of skeleton for package development. Like I normally just create a Laravel app and I'll do exactly what you said. I'll put a folder in there and I'll put all of my files in it and I'll start just drag and dropping stuff just to make sure that it works. I wonder if there's just like a slimmer version of Laravel that I can just ignore those extra files and I don't know.
What I usually do is I do the Spotty, they have a package skeleton. I use that. But I still have to create like a blank Laravel app and drag it in, you know, like
because you don't have the Artisan file.
Yeah, right. Yeah, you don't have the CLI or anything. Yeah. He works for Laravel now, but there was some package out there where you could test very granular things, and it was like a test sandbox, but for Laravel development packages. It was really good. I can't remember the name of it. He worked on Laravel Nova for a while, but anyway. He's actually, I think, the new Dries. He kind of handles GitHub issues for Laravel. But anyway, he manages a package that helps with package development. But still, I don't think you can look at like an HTTP page like on your browser or anything and just be able to test something. You have to deliberately create a Laravel app and poke around. So, like for filament extensions and stuff, that's primarily where my headspace is going. Is anytime I create a filament extension or stuff, you can't do that in just a package. Yeah,
for real. That headache, I've had that so often in the last like 6 months. It's insane how crazy that is to do. Because the way that I do it is in Filament, in a package for Laravel. So now I have to have the package, and I have to have the filament, and then I have to have Laravel with filament installed just to test to see if this damn link shows up in the dashboard that I want it to be in the correct order. Like I want to order it so that my widget's always the first widget on the dashboard. Wild.
Yeah.
That's probably where this receding hairline came from. I don't know if you could see it.
No. Let's talk about, we talked about earlier, talk about DOM methods. Talked about you being a stub guy. Are you a DOM method guy?
I think...
I'm trying to remember in your PRs if I see DOM methods.
Yeah, I think we've had this exact argument before.
Yeah.
And I say argument loosely because I don't think we've actually argued with each other. But yeah, I'm a down guy. I like to have it there just to be there. Because I think before, I can't remember what you use. I think you use migrate refresh seed -- seed. I think that's what you use. And I was using, or maybe you're doing migrate reset or something like that. I was using a different one, and you were using one that ignored the down table. It just basically just deleted your database and started over.
Yep.
And the command that I was using was rollback, right? It reset all the migrations and then run them all in order again. So I like to have the down method specifically for that, so I can go back and forth. Whereas I think you before was just delete everything, start from the top.
Yeah.
So I like to have down methods just in case, like somebody comes in and they do migrate rollback. I'll put them in there. I'll keep them auto-generated. I'll do create posts table, and it'll automatically have a schema create and a schema drop. And I'll leave it as that. I'll delete the comments and do my stuff and move on. I have down methods.
Yeah. So, hear me out on this. I think down methods are dangerous.
Okay.
Yeah. So the reason I know you're getting all heated over there. So
getting angry now.
I find like a complex down method, especially in production when you need to roll back and it has not been tested. And we don't know if it's been tested, and obviously it can't be tested. Or if you're testing this in CI and stuff, that's stupid. So you're not going to be testing your down methods in CI to ensure they work, unless you're, I don't know, but
crazy.
Anyway, yeah, a complex down method that's especially that hasn't been tested is more dangerous than no down method at all. And it kind of anytime you have you have to be really careful with your actual migration method, like that's going in, your insert that's going in, and not having that sense of consideration of like, oh, I could just roll back, if things go wrong. I can see that take of like just making sure it's correct. And there have been times where I do want to roll back. So I do have down methods on existing database tables. I will say that.
You will admit that you have
but if it's a new feature, new method, like no, like we're either going to blow it away or we're not going to have, like, I don't need to have roll back this model. Like I always just like to continue going forward. Like if there's something wrong, I'll just create another migration to fix it, and there's been times where, the down method is like deleting a table, the insert is deleting a table. So the down method needs to be recreating that table. There's been so many migrations since then. Maybe I don't even know what the table fully looks like. And so I have to kind of look at table plus to kind of architect that out of like, oh, well, this has an index and this is over here. And then you have to look at foreign keys. It's just a mess. So I'm like, just down, forget about it. Either we know for sure when this deploys, that table is gone. Like back it up. If you want that thing to come back, you gotta have some backups. But usually not. So if I'm creating a new table, or if I'm deleting a table, no down method. If I'm changing something, absolutely. If I'm changing something from a string varchar to like a text, sure. Like if I need more, I'll absolutely do a down method. But yeah, it's kind of my hot take on that. Just too much to maintain. They don't really work when you don't ever use them. When you do use them, it probably won't work because it's kind of testy. You make sure it does work because you don't want to, it hasn't been thoroughly tested. You might break something else and then you're worse in the pickle than just creating a new migration to fix it. You have some opinions, I can tell.
Well, no, I mean, I agree with everything that you're saying. Especially if I'm changing columns, like if I'm going to drop a column and add a column, I'll usually have a down method for that. That way if I wanted to roll back. But yeah, I'm curious, like people listening, how often do you put a down method? Like, are you using migrate refresh? Or are you using migrate rollback? Like, how often? I don't think I've ever ran a rollback in production. I don't think I've ever done it. I've done it local. I don't think I've
probably I could count on my hands like how many times, but it's very, very rare. Like, oh shoot, you know, it's usually a Linux versus Mac issue. Like when it does happen, like when it does, it's usually some discrepancy that something weird, you know, because we usually CI will always catch it, you know, test will always catch it.
Yeah, I mean it's great. I see both sides of our arguments. I'm curious on what other people use, because I can't fault you for what you said. That sounds right. I would use that for those use cases. I use the down method just because that's what they come with when I create a migration file. Maybe I just need to publish those stubs and get rid of them completely.
Yeah, and just get rid of that down method. Yeah. My stubs for my personal websites do not have down methods, but they're nothing. They're nothing. You know, I don't need down methods. It's continuous. You know, so I'm not gonna sit there and, you know, create those, but I always continue to go forward. I always see migrations as going forward. One thing, I don't get too off on a tangent with this, but like one thing I've always wanted ever since the beginning when I was first learning Laravel, Symfony had this, I believe, but I really want model-based migrations. Like that would just be so nice. Do you know where I'm going with this?
Yeah, that's a whole podcast right there.
Yeah. We got to talk about that sometime, but basically in your
list.
model, your user model, inside there, imagine having like you type in a command and something with constraints that you set up in your user model, and it just creates a migration for you based on your schema that you have in your user model table. So you can have your schema set up in your user model, and it just, you type in like generate migration, and it boop, and it generates a migration. I've started going down this road. The tricky part is like, we're getting into this topic, but the tricky, I'll keep it short and sweet. But the tricky part is like Laravel is continuous. It's going forward. Laravel can't go back and decide and roll through the method and decide where your tables are at the current state. And so basically Laravel doesn't know, it doesn't have the ability right now to know you need to change this from a text to a varchar. I need to generate migration, what that looks like. You have to like think of your own paradigm for that, like, and how you're going to solve that. But we'll get into that topic next show. Good, yeah.
That's a teaser right there.
It. Yeah.
Strong opinions.
But one thing, yeah, because we're also we threw on here was migrations. There's a lot of debate here. Migrations versus seeders. And we had this come up not too long ago where I think it was fairly recent where you commented on a PR and you're like, why is this a migration?
Yeah, you put like I think it was an insert method. You had an insert method in a migration. You built a table and then you inserted values directly into that table, just like in the next line. I was like, why?
Like, what?
Why? Tell me why.
Well, I think this goes from my early days, because back in the day, back in like the Laravel 4 and 5 days, you could not have factories and seeders in production. They just wouldn't, like, if you ran user factory, it would just be like, this doesn't exist, because I think it was actually like a local development dependency. So I think that's where my mind started, like the first initial thought. But then once you get past that, it's just like when you have like permissions and stuff as fundamental as like a schema, like your app won't function without permissions. Yeah, I think it's so much easier to do a migration. The tricky part is if I develop a new seeder, like I have a new permission coming in or I have a change coming in, I have to create this seeder. Like I have to figure out how to put that seeder into the deployment pipeline to, like, when my app deploys, I have to make sure it runs this random seeder in there. And perhaps you can get something into where it runs your seeders every time and does it to check, like, if this doesn't exist, then create it. If this doesn't exist, create it. But that's just a nightmare.
That's extra
I just do migrations.
Maintainability.
Yeah. I just do migrations. And another thing is this tests are easier. You can like set up the migration, or you can set up the seeders in your tests and do all of that. But I hate that, because if you're doing something like user controller, you test, you assert that the controller can create a user, right? But if you have these seeders already creating authenticated admins in your app. It's like, so if you assert that one user has been created, you might have like 10 users, and then you have this weird quirk in your test code of like, oh well, we're doing 10 here because the seeder creates 9 users, and it's just ridiculous. So tests are easier if you do migrations. And if permissions change, you maybe want it tracked in the migration. You can do a down method. You can't do down methods in seeders. So I've done down methods before where if something's weird about this new permission, or if I change a permission from one to another, I need it to happen immediately. I don't need to, like, once the migration's hit, I need to ensure that the thing has changed. And if something goes wrong, I can run a down command, or if I needed to. So yeah, that's my cases for I love migrations. I really like seeders for local development. Like we have a very large app that obviously I never want to bring in production data, so I just run seeders in there, sets it up locally. Don't have to, but seeders in production. No.
So, yeah, I'm in 100% agreement. I think seeders are great for local development. Like I'm coming into your site. I need to be able to get a user that doesn't have any billing information. I need a user that has billing information. I need someone who has outdated billing information. Right? I need those 3 pieces so I can test if a bug comes up for one of those 3. I need a seeder for that. I'm going to run, PHP Artisan migrate, not rollback, but refresh -- seed. I want a fresh database. All the seeders run. I do not run seeders in production ever, because I'll have to add them to the deployment script, then remove them, or I'll wait for it to deploy and then manually run that command through Forge. But if it's stuff like permissions, there's 15-30 seconds between the deployment being done, the migrations being run, and then me manually running
that. Yeah.
A seeder command. Oh, I forgot, something like that, and it's broken.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I'm in 100% agreement. After I saw that, I had the perfect use case for it like a week ago, and I added a migration that created a table, and then within that table, I was able to seed, 4 or 5 default information or default values into that table, and boom, it worked. All you had to do is PHP Artisan migrate, done.
Yeah.
You got the stuff. It's ready to go. Yeah, I'm 100% agreement. I think seeders are great for local. Only.
All the solid bros or separation of concerns bros that, it needs to be clearly, they'll say differently, but it's just, man, when real world comes to some of this stuff, it's just when you, especially permissions, and that's my example, like when I primarily use it, you just need things to happen as the application deploys. Like there's not, at the moment, there's not like a streamlined process for Laravel of like, hey, on this next deployment, I want to make sure this artisan command runs, but just this one time, don't do it again. Like just run it this one instance of try to fix something. There's not anything like that. So there might be a package or something that does it, but hey, migrations, just use those. It makes it easy. So
they're there. And listen, the solid bros, if you've got a solid problem, bros. You can add us. It's Andy, whatever your Twitter handle is, Andy Hink, Andy.
Yeah, H&K. Yep.
Andy H&K and Mindstop McClare. You can at me. That's fine. I don't care. All I'm going to tell you to do is you can write your seeder and then just call the seeder in the migration file. Boom, we're both right. Gotcha.
Yeah, that'd be great. I didn't think of that. You could just call your seeder. Yeah,
call your seeder in the migration.
If you're depends on your application. If you're in migration down, it's gonna fuss at you. But yeah, for sure.
That's just like an extra file. I wouldn't do that. Why would I abstract that to another file when I just call it right in that migration file?
Yeah,
whatever,
sure.
Man.
All right, man. It's been really good. Yeah, add us. You wanna close this out?
Yeah. So I think this will be the last episode we do this year. So
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, Happy Kwanzaa, Hanukkah, all the other stuff. Sorry if I forgot. We want to thank you for listening. If you've made it this far,
thank you to you. You are very technical. If you made it this far, please reach out, because you made it. You stuck with us. You are a very technical person, because I bet just 5 minutes in this show, like, we jumped off the deep end. So I appreciate it.
Eyes glazed over and like, whoa. Yeah, so if you made it this far,
it's a very technical show. That's what I like about it.
Extra special thank you to you. We really appreciate you, and we'll be back in 2025 for more. So stay tuned. Bye.